I got to a point where I was really forced to look in the mirror and I realized it was me. Everything I was really going through, all my suffering, all my pain, all this inner turmoil was really because of me. It really started and stopped with my inner world. And that sent me on this journey of figuring out things from mindset, learning about the inner critic, learning about emotions, feelings, stuff guys don't know anything about, for the most part, certainly don't like to talk about it. We feel them, but we don't like to talk about them. So learning about that stuff, learning how to regulate all that stress management, more of a holistic approach to health and wellness. And so then it kind of led me to being like, hey, a lot of this stuff I'm learning actually really freaking works. And I feel way better.
Hey there, dental economist. If you're a dentist owner or a leader within a dental business thinking about growing production, case acceptance, patient and staff satisfaction, positive outcomes, and everything else that comes with running a dental business, then you're a dental economist, and you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Dental Economist Show. We're meeting at the intersection of profit and purpose as I sit down with dental leaders who share their stories about dentistry, business, and growth. Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we have a very special guest. It's a friend of mine, Tim Perreira, who happens to be walking across the United States to bring awareness to men's mental health and the 34,000 men who die by suicide each year in the United States alone. I've known Tim now for just about 10 years, since his time working in tech with startups in sales leadership and through his journey as an entrepreneur and men's coach. He shares openly about his journey, the challenges that he's faced and that he still faces, and the breakthroughs that he's experienced on social media and on LinkedIn. You can follow along with his walk across America on LinkedIn, on Instagram, all the socials where he shares frequent updates on the experience. Tim, really excited to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I can't believe it's been 10 years.
I know. Kind of hard to believe, right?
It's like I was there, but when I heard you start that sentence, I didn't think you were going to say 10 years. And then you did. And I was like, wow, you're right.
It had 10 years in many cities in between too. So
yeah, a lot of cities.
Been quite the journey. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You know, if I'm being honest, when I first saw you post on LinkedIn, like, hey, I'm going to walk across the United States, I wanted to call and check in and be like, hey, are you feeling okay? Because it seemed like just such ambitious effort. And then the second thing that popped in my head was, man, this kind of feels like exactly the right thing that Tim should be doing. Share a little bit, how did you come to the conclusion that this was the right path to take to raise awareness for mental health and all those that die by suicide?
In 2020, I had my pivotal time. People will say terms like rock bottom. I hit my dark night of the soul, my crossroads, or I was at a crossroads. I was at a midlife crisis. For me, it was a combination of rock bottom and total turning point. And I had been battling depression quietly, silently by myself, anxiety, depression for about 4 years. Got to a spot where it was really impacting my performance at work in tech sales to the point where I was not motivated. I was not a good sales rep anymore. And I ended up getting fired for performance, which when we worked together, I was like all in. I was very motivated. I was a good sales rep. I always hit my number. And so it was clear to me something was off. And so anyway, 2020 was when I really started to look inward because I had tried so hard to change everything externally. And if you upgrade your quality of life, it can help here or there. You get maybe a nicer car or apartment, or you get a better job, you make a little bit more money, but ultimately that stuff doesn't really last. It's like a flash in the pan. And I tried that for years. And so I got to a point where I was really forced to look in the mirror and I realized it was me. Everything I was really going through, all my suffering, all my pain, all this inner turmoil was really because of me. It really started and stopped with my inner world. And that sent me on this journey of figuring out things from mindset, learning about the inner critic, learning about emotions, feelings, stuff guys don't know anything about for the most part, certainly don't like to talk about it. We feel them, but we don't like to talk about them. So learning about that stuff, learning how to regulate all that stress management, more of a holistic approach to health and wellness. And So then it kind of led me to being like, hey, a lot of this stuff I'm learning actually really freaking works. And I feel way better. And I want to share this with other men because it's not as scary and lonely as I thought it was. The more I learn about myself and I heal myself, to use that term, the more I actually understand what other people are going through. And I have so much more empathy for them. And I became way more comfortable talking with other people, other men, especially about just regular challenges, stresses, stuff they were bottling up, pressures at work, pressures at home, being a dad, running a business, not having a job, being out of shape, being obsessed with working out, all these challenges that show up in so many different ways. And I just realized that, hey, there's something here. And so that became my business. I turned it into men's coaching and combo of health coaching and community and all this stuff. And then in the beginning of last year, to get to your question really about this walk, last year started to feel off in the beginning of the year with my business and the trajectory on paper. Things are going well. I was signing up clients. My customer base was growing, but I'm like, this ain't it. Something is off here. Still wanted to be in the industry. I knew I really wanted to help men with this, but how I was doing it, it was kind of getting burnt out, which is so funny because I was helping guys with burnout. And so I started seeking in the beginning of 2024 for something. Do I need a change up? I knew I had to keep doing the work on me, but I'm like, maybe I need to move to Costa Rica for a month, get off the grid, just do a reset, see what comes up. Maybe I need to go to a meditation retreat. Maybe I need to go visit some random temple or something I've never been to that's out of my comfort zone. Everything was on the table. Maybe I need to go to India. And I ended up going on this trip to India, which is a whole different story in its own. It was just life-changing. It was really powerful with this amazing group of people. I was there for about 2.5 weeks. And again, this was in November. And when I got back, I skipped an important part. Before I decided to go on the trip to India, feeling off all year, I started to feel really depressed again. I went through this phase of about 3 or 4 months of deep depression, really apathetic depression, which was different than the first time I went through it. The first time I went through it, I was high functioning depression. I was still able to go to work. I was still able to go socialize. I was still able to exercise. This period last year was like almost lost all bodily function in a way. No motivation. I was sleeping until 9:30, 10. I was skipping workouts. I wasn't doing the healthy stuff and the habits I had cultivated over the last 5 years. Nothing seemed to really work. And I was at a point where I just didn't care anymore if it did. And it was so new to me. It kind of came out of nowhere. And then what accompanied that was suicidal thoughts. For the first time I'd ever really dealt with those. And they were increasing with frequency. They were increasing with intensity over those 3 or 4 months. So that's really what spurred me I got to do something so out of my comfort zone that I'm going to try and go to India. And I've hired tons of coaches, therapists, all this other stuff I was also doing. Something is just off. So that's really what led me to India. I get back from India and I'm like, that was amazing, life-changing. I'll never be the same again in a good way. Feel almost like this heaviness is coming back. And I saw a video of a guy talking about how he walked across America. And the second I heard him say those words, I felt like I had a lightning bolt go through my body. Holy crap. I'm like, that's the thing. I'm like, that's it. I'm doing that. And it was so cool because it felt like all of that wondering during the whole year, I need to mix it up. Change is coming. I need to change. Maybe it's a trip, whatnot. It all became crystal clear in that moment that I was like, this is the thing. It was almost like the decision was made for me in a weird way, describe it that way. And really for me, my approach was like, man, this is an opportunity to spend 5-6 months on the road, go without music, out podcasts, out audiobooks, me in the open road and nature and my thoughts, and really a chance to sit with and process a lot of the stuff that has been challenging me for the last 10 years or so. We're going to go all in and do it. And after I figured that out, that I wanted that to be the intention of me really working through a lot of some of the stuff I haven't quite faced yet, I was like, what better thing to do than to promote men's mental health and suicide prevention? Now having at least a foundation of understanding what people go through in the phase of suicidal ideation. I didn't have an attempt, but I felt so much more connected to the guys who have felt that way. So I would love to use this trip as a way to not only bring more awareness to it, but to talk about my journey and process on the trip as I try and process this stuff and to let people in on, hey, what are the actual things I'm doing tactically? How am I processing what's come up? And then, of course, sharing the novelty and the fun of all the experiences of walking across America. So, and then just picked a number of $50,000 to raise money for organizations. And really the main goal is to just start conversations and bring much more awareness around it and help men figure out like how to deal with it and steps they can take.
We've definitely started conversations. And I was thinking about this. You started on the beaches of Orange County a few months back now. Was that February?
March 6th, 124 days ago as of recording this.
124 days. And now you've made it all the way to Nashville, which is pretty incredible. And for those that are listening, like look on a map. Sometimes Americans' knowledge of geography isn't so great. But look at a map and look how far that is, and then recognize that's in 124 days. What is something that you expected to be maybe more challenging than it's turned out to be? And can you think of a challenge that you faced that just was unexpected, that you know you did a lot of planning before this, but maybe a few things that were unexpected and then something that you thought wasn't going to be a problem has actually been harder than you thought?
It's interesting. The days are really simple. You wake up and it's like, I just got to walk today. I can do today. And the days are simple, but the days are hard. The days are long and the weeks fly by. It's really crazy. Like the weeks absolutely fly by. And I don't know if there's anything that was much harder than I anticipated. I had 2 months straight of pretty intense body soreness and pain my body was not only adjusting, but didn't have time to rest and recoup. It was adjusting while walking still. So I just, in really deep, incredible soreness and pain. And I had so many days, especially in the first 2 months, I didn't feel like I could get up and walk. And it's like, well, I got 28 miles today. So let's start breathing. Let's start getting through it. So maybe that level, I don't want to say I didn't anticipate it though, but the level of pain through the first 28 days, I probably had more surprises on the opposite, on what the power of the mind can do to make things easier, guiding thoughts and helping flush pain from the body. I think physically it's pretty straightforward. It's you get up and you walk a long distance and you deal with weather and you deal with oncoming cars and you figure places to sleep. I think if anybody were to plan a long walk, those would be the things that you think of and that are probably on your mind. The thing that kind of caught me off guard, especially probably in the last 2 months, in the middle third of the trip, has been the shift in the mental and emotional state on the road where I lost a lot of my excitement for the walk. In no time did I feel like I was going to quit. That's not going to happen. But I think times where I just felt very apathetic on the walk, when the mind gets into a negative thought loop, can make the days seem 10 times as long. The part that I maybe didn't expect was, the periods of the walk where I'm like, man, I got to do this tomorrow. Most days I don't actually want to get up and put myself through 30 miles of walking. But in the middle third, there were some very strong feelings of like, I almost want to do anything else. Get up and walk today, and especially when it started to get hot.
Sure. And what I respect about that a lot is that you've shared that. I feel like there's a tendency people just want to put a positive spin on everything. Well, hey, I'm doing this. So every day I'm going to share about how amazing it is and how amazing what I've decided to do is. You've been very open with both the good, the bad, the ugly. One thing I love that you've talked about during the walk is your willingness to accept help. In your LinkedIn posts, it's often a portion of the story is somebody pulled over to offer you a bottle of water or a sweet tea or a power bar or something. And that you said that was kind of a challenge for you throughout the course of your life is accepting help. But on this walk, you were intentional from the outset that you were committed to accepting the help of strangers throughout the experience. Why is that important to you? And what does it mean?
I think noticing, being more aware of my own tendencies to close myself off from others. And it can be under the guise of independence or individuality, of strength. I don't need that. I can do it myself. I know I could get through this without the help of others. But what is that proving to anybody? And realizing really what that is it's a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism to not allow others in. Closes my heart just enough to where I feel a little bit safer. there's a part of me that says, hey, look, in the past, I have let somebody in, I've asked for help. I was maybe vulnerable in some way with somebody, whether it's at work or a personal relationship, and I got hurt. And so the human tendency is to close up with that. And we defend our actions to do that. We defend it in ways that sound almost altruistic or sound positive. No, I'm just super independent. And what this walk has done is it's provided a canvas. It's provided a space for me to see all of that bullshit. I see what you're doing and you're not fooling me. Okay. So it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't mean all of a sudden I'm like, hey, everybody, I love you. Thank you for the water. No, but it puts me in a position to where when it happens, I'm present and I'm aware of it. And I go, you know what? This is something I've struggled with. And let me see if I can not only take the water from them physically, but if I can receive it, dare I say the word energetically, if I receive it emotionally, I receive it from them and really really feel gratitude, not just express it verbally. Because what I have also seen, part of this change in narrative or approach that has really helped me is understanding that when you let others help, you're really giving them something. I think as men, we can often be like, I don't need help. Good. But at the same time, we would absolutely be there for one of our friends, whether it's helping them build a fence, helping them pick up the kids from school if they can't do it, as maybe they're feeling sick and they just need to pick up the in-laws from the airport, whatever. It's like, we're like, yeah, dude, of course, I will help you with anything. And yet on the other side of it, on the inverse, would be like, I'm not going to ask my friend for that. So you have this very willing, strong party over here, and then we're over here with this false strength. And really, it's just a protection of our own ego or some fragile part of us that we've tried to mask over the years. And so recognizing that and saying, okay, yeah, for one, I'm doing this for me because I'm practicing connection with others. Part of my walk is just compassion and empathy and being in the space of love and not walking through fear, not fearing strangers, but instead, can I approach people with, we're the same. We're all part of this together. It was just an experiment. Let's see what happens. So receiving from others was a way for me to really push myself in that way and to actually do it and to understand, hey, this person has stopped on the side of the road. There have been so many people that have driven by without doing anything. This person said, you know what, there's somebody, it matters enough to me to stop down and roll down my window and say, hey, do you want a banana? Do you want a water? Do you want a Coke? Do you want a sweet tea? One guy shoved his golf umbrella out the window and was like, take this. He's like, I don't want you to get wet. And seeing the kindness, not being all about yourself and being like, no, if I take help, it looks like I'm weak. It's like, we got to get over ourselves. And it's not always easy. Sometimes I forget and I'll be like, no, I'm good. I'll catch myself and I'll be like, you wait a minute, give me that water. I'll take it.
So you have a large reach on LinkedIn now that you've built over quite some time. And I know that it's created new connections and relationships that you did not have previously. And just from following along the journey, it's been pretty awesome to see the involvement of others, even folks that maybe you had never met in person before, that were otherwise strangers, just connected through this electronic medium, seeking a way to support the mission and support you. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like, whether or not that was a surprise to you, or you kind of had a sense that these doors would likely open throughout the course of the journey?
Yeah, I think was probably less surprising was the quantity of support. So I had a feeling like people would support it. It's like this big challenge. It's like sexy. It's for this cause that is noble and everything. And so I was like, okay, that I have a feeling people would get behind it. But what has really surprised me is the depth of impact it has had on people and how they sharing it with me. And that's something that I still find myself not struggling to grasp, but surprised at the shares people. Like, it's almost like I'm not ready for them to share how much it means to them. I would get hundreds and hundreds of messages on DMs and messages of men sharing privately of how it's affected them or somebody in their family, or women messaging me as well. But I think there have been guys who have driven 12 hours to walk with me, who flew across the country and then drove 7 hours from the airport with their significant other to walk with me, or drove across the state just to meet up for an hour and It's one thing to read it online through a message, but to be in a physical space with them and then just trying to relay how much it means to them. And if you think about, for it to have that much of an impact on someone, for them not only to reach out and share it, which is hard enough for 90% of men, but to take time off work, take time out of their day, come meet me in a random place, middle of the road in Tennessee, and I met somebody just next to a cornfield on a little turnoff, and then, pay for my hotel or pay for food or whatever. The support vehicle for me for a few days is something that still is really cool. And it's amazing to be a part of that. But I think something that is almost like there's a part of me that still grasps the magnitude and the impact it's had on some of these guys' life, to finally feel like, hey, there's somebody that's standing up for something that's really impacted me, sharing a message. And that's exactly how I felt. And I haven't known how to voice it, or I've never been able to voice it. Or, a guy just shared online. He told me after walking with me, he's like, I told my dad that I was coming to walk with you. And his dad shared some stuff he had dealt with that he had never shared before. And so this guy who walked with me told me, he's like, you helped me have the most meaningful conversation I've ever had with my dad. And he gave me a big hug, and I just sat with that comment. I still think about that. And, I don't think it's me doing it so much, but what really lands with me, what I think about is how many men are in the shadows who are deeply going through challenges and feel like there is no outlet. And so this has provided a bit of a space for them to follow along, to feel seen, to be part of a movement. And somebody's like, yeah, man, this is something I really resonate with. And, and seeing them start to come out of the shadows and either do the 34,000 step challenge, come out and walk with me, just send me a note or something, has been pretty incredible.
Actually, share a little bit about the 34,000 step challenge, because I know that there was a few people at the beginning, and then it really has picked up the pace, and you've seen many more people start to adopt this. Pretty neat to watch it happen.
So it's 34,000 steps. It's for every guy. So the challenge is take 34,000 steps, no music, no distractions, no phones, just you and your steps, bringing your awareness to your space, to each step, because each step you take represents one man who dies by suicide every year in the US. And really, I think the number is actually between 36 and 39,000. I don't know how I messed that number up, but when I created or shared the challenge, that's what came up. But it's not totally the point, just getting guys out there walking. And, it's about, depending on the person walking, it's between 16 and 21 miles. These are all the different mileage that I've seen come through. So, when I first shared it, the reason, just to explain the initial blip and then the later surge, when I first shared it, I had a ton of people message me like, oh, I'm going to do that. Absolutely. This is amazing. I support. And then I only had 2 people do it. And a month or 2 later, I'm like, you know what? I went back to that post and I'm reading. I was like, none of these people have done this. So I created another post that was a little bit more aggressive. And I was like, look, there's a lot of you that said you were going to do this. We need some people to actually show up and match your commitment. And I think it lit a fire under some people. Then guys started going, and then a couple shares. And I think it started to catch on. And so what was amazing was what I would always look for when guys would share is they would share about the challenges. And they're like, oh, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. I think people don't realize how hard it is to walk 20 miles, but was the mental experience behind it, dealing with negative thoughts, working through that, and then often feeling deep feeling of gratitude. That's a very common share, the end of the walk, just like, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude. A few guys had releases like cries, which is something I've had on, especially in the first 2 months. It felt like every day I had tears coming out at random parts of the walk. And so just this very cathartic process, and realizing the magnitude of how many men die by suicide because they just took that many steps, and they're translated into the physical pain of the challenge. So it's been really cool to see the amount of guys that have gone out and done it.
It's one of the things I think people find very interesting when they hear about you walking across the country, is that you're also walking across the country without listening to podcasts or contents or a lot of input that's taking place. Like, you are living with yourself throughout the course of the walk. Now, you did share one thing with me about some playlists that you had created for yourself that I was hoping you could talk a little bit about, because you had mentioned that you've created almost like soundtracks or specific playlists for your life that you use for different purposes. Can you share what the impetus was that and how you decided what you needed to create these playlists for?
So I have what's called a vision playlist. And the whole purpose of the vision playlist is to get me into a visualization type of state where athletes use type of positive visualization all the time. And they often use things like cues or little markers or positive self-talk, encouragement. When you're doing something like a visualization exercise, almost like a meditation, one would be like, hey, visualizing your life 5 years from now. You want the job, you want to get a nice house, you want the partner, maybe you want to be fit. Visualization is incredibly powerful in helping us get there. And the whole purpose of visualization the whole method is really to envision yourself already in that state, already that problem. And it's not just a mental loop. What makes visualization not only stickier, but more effective is, for one, if we can get very detailed with it. So if we can visualize textures, sounds, smells, tastes, the clothing we're wearing, like whatever, the details don't matter so much, but if we can get very detailed. The second is invoking emotion. Because if you think of all of your strongest memories in your life, they're all tied to really, really strong emotions, whether they're, the birth of your boys, whether it is like getting a major promotion, maybe it's heartbreak at a young age, maybe it's a loved one passing, it's all tied to very strong emotion. And so I learned this from my former coach that I worked with, a guy named Rob Renahan. And Rob just had us start with one vision song. It was a song that tapped us into a very, very just like strongest emotion, just something that makes us feel alive. That's why we started with one song. It's one song that you put it on and you can just lose yourself in the music. Like you get goosebumps, just like really brings you into a heightened state, like a primed state. When people do things like jump on trampolines, they do breath work, they maybe jump in a cold plunge to get into these heightened states. So this is just another method. And that evolved to adding more songs into this playlist that just help you tune into emotions that are important for your vision. So it doesn't always have to be like, I'm going to listen to Motley Crue and get ramped up and just fired up to go. And that's all the songs. Like my main one is Thunderstruck. I'm maybe the only person on earth who cries every time I listen to Thunderstruck. I don't know why. It's so powerful to me for whatever reason that I can't explain. I probably have 14 songs so far, and sometimes it changes, but every song has a purpose. Every song is there to tap me into a particular emotion that is helpful for this purpose of mine, right? This vision that I have for my life. And a lot of it is around the man I want to be, how I want to show up, right? I want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. I want to treat everybody just with love and compassion. I want to help a lot of people. I want to be confident. I want to also be like, have fun and be playful and be joyful. I want to be strong. But what's really important for me doing this work with men is to remember and tap into my sadness in parts of me that are in pain, because that's such an important part of this whole mission. So I share that. So those are just some examples of, and faith is a part of it too for me, which is ever evolving. So I just have different songs that tap me into those different emotions. And so maybe about once a week, twice a week, maybe I'll put on that playlist. And so that's really about the only thing I put on while walking, but it's only about an hour long, but it helps me tap into everything and visualize a bit.
I love that. I think even just the intentionality of putting the thought into what songs evoke what emotions for you is like a really worthwhile exercise. And then on the other end of that, now you have this tool that like you've created based off of what works for you that you can then lean into from the vision perspective. So thanks for sharing about that. I want to take a step back for a second. And you did have a background and a career in tech sales, and you worked for different startups and companies that were really fast growing. And throughout the course of that time, you were achieving success in the work world, but you were also dealing with many challenges within. And I was reflecting a little bit on you work with men to help them navigate these challenges in their life. But what do you wish you had as it relates to support from the companies themselves? Like when you think about everybody has their own journeys that they're going to go through. A lot of people aren't going to have the opportunity necessarily to go to India or to go and pursue some of these other paths to find ways to, grow personally. And many are going to work through these journeys within a corporate environment or corporate America. And many also manage people that are in these situations. I think the leaders need to recognize that life is messy and people that we manage is not always pretty picture. People compartmentalize and you don't know what somebody is necessarily going through when they're at work. So if you could share, maybe a little bit of what you think corporate America needs more of, or what you would like to see would be helpful and supportive for men that are struggling.
I think back to 2016, 2020, and one of my filters when I'm doing something or if I'm working on my business or something is I always think, what would have helped me most during that time? It's just something that always comes up for me because I kept it to myself. Even when I started working on my mental health, I did it solo. I did it through books and podcasts, and it took me much longer because of that. And I know that. And that was also me like wanting to do stuff on my own and not get help. And so this is full circle. You're seeing where that came from or where the accepting help stemmed from. And so what I always think is what would have helped most, and reminds me of this idea that men don't heal face to face, we heal shoulder to shoulder. And what always comes up every time I ask that question is if I had a role model, somebody who had been through it, somebody who was open about it, somebody who talked about it. And it's a big reason why, I just sharing whatever I'm going through. I don't need pity. I don't need people to say it's going to be okay, but it's to describe things in a way that resonates with somebody who has never been able to put words to what they're going through and to share that. And I think I'm like, man, if I would have had somebody I looked up to in the sales org, within the business, a mentor, somebody who I was like, I see myself in that person, or I really aspire to be like them. They have some great qualities, or they also played college sports, or they're in sales, or something that I resonate, I connect with them. And they are just so confident in all their shit, all their challenges, their suffering, their growth, their weaknesses, strengths, and they're open about it. And it's like, they don't try and hide, put on this mask to be like, I never go through anything. It's like, my life is together. And instead they embrace their humanness. And one of the things I see with corporate is they may create these employee wellness programs, but it's not done with leaders who are leading by example. It's like kids, as you know, raising kids. I don't have kids, but I'm going to share this example, and you can disagree if this isn't true. They watch what you do. They listen more and take after the things you do versus what you tell them to do, right? What you say. They're watching everything you do, and they're going to model their life after, okay, this is what how dad's showing up. It's really the same way with any type of leadership. The words we speak carry such little weight in communication. It's only like 7% of communication is done verbally. And to me, that's, even setting up these programs just doesn't meet men where they're at. It doesn't provide men the things they need. So looking at first, what I would say is like leaders, they got to go first. They have to be in the work, and whatever that means for them. I think the easiest thing that leaders can do is get some kind of coach. And for those that say, I'm not getting a coach, I don't need a coach. I'm like, who had a coach? The greatest athletes of all time. And I'm not just talking about the head coach of the team. I'm talking about the individual coaches that people like Michael Jordan, people like Kobe Bryant had. Oprah had a life coach as well, which is pretty mind blowing, really, if you think about it. But because what coaches help you do is just see your blind spots, and they help you get from performing at a good level, high level, to an elite level. And so even something like that, I think shows that they're leading by example. They're saying, owning the fact that I don't have it all figured out and I want to improve. The point of getting help isn't saying I'm broken, I suck, this is over. It's saying, no. I am strong enough to say, you know what? Some shit's not working right now. And I am strong enough to admit that and say, but I want it to be great. That's what I want most. I want to be great more than I want to protect my ego. That's what keeps people trapped, is living in this bubble and wearing this mask, being this person who they think they need to be, as opposed to really exploring truth, really exploring their potential and their capabilities instead of saying, I should just be able to do it, on my own. So in a corporate environment, it's leaders that are going first, and it could be coaching. It can be other stuff too. But I think that's almost a more tangible one. And, some of the coolest stories that I've heard is companies that either provide an internal coach or they hire a company to provide coaching for employees, because that can be a great way to bridge the gap, especially for men. Get men to open up a bit more about areas that aren't maybe going exactly how they like. And a good coach is going to have some traits and characteristics of counselors or therapists and whatnot. And both of them play a role and can play a role in the healing journey. And so I think that's, just one thing that I see as being something that men would be open to, especially if leaders that they're looking up to are like, I got a coach because man, I just want to be better. And the coaches, their role is to help them with every area of their life, because better humans, better employees.
The comment, I want to be great more than I want to protect my ego, is brilliant. It's a really amazing way to frame it. And I don't think a lot of people think about it in such a simple phrase that is so important. That really gets in the way of a lot of people's growth. We, as part of our book club, we read Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And, she leans hard into vulnerability. It's all about, being vulnerable. But she makes some very strong distinctions about how you can do that in the workforce in a professional way to really set and lead by example to allow others to feel comfortable as you're speaking. I think it's really important. Been really hard to do. It's not something that's been encouraged in many environments. And so you do need somebody that I think that's brave, lead with that and go first so that others can feel comfortable doing it as well.
Look, to be honest, you need leaders who are emotionally intelligent and have at least worked on, or maybe they have some innate capabilities of emotional regulation and understanding, like deep self-awareness, and who are interested in personal transformation or growth and in whatever capacity that looks like. And not everybody is. And if you're in an environment where people aren't, it's an uphill battle, and they'll just maybe keep sweeping it under the rug or act like it's not for them or whatever. And that's okay too. Everyone's on their own path. But for those who are interested and care about it, because not everybody will, that's really where I feel it starts. It's got to start at the top. And the top could be the literal top of the company, but it could be the leaders of individual teams, right? It can be leading within the team. Like if people who are natural leaders, they may not be in a leadership position at work, but they just lead people who they're around in their personal lives, professional lives. Now, that's really what I mean with leadership is like, man, when you're in the work and you're committed to it, the best way you can get others to adopt it is to be the walking example.
So 2 final questions for you, which it could take us a little while, but the first one is, when we had dinner in Sedona, you shared with me a book to read. It was called Letting Go. I've read it. It's a great book. I recommend it to others as well. It really kind of changes the way that you think about things. And I need to go back and read it again. We were talking about before we started recording here, but there's a big focus on awareness of emotions and then also how you can surrender them. And surrender is a phrase that I've heard, or a term that I've heard you speak about a lot since you've started this journey, practice of surrendering. So I know it's been an area of focus for you. Can you talk about why that's important and what it means when you say it? Because I think people probably interpret the act of surrender in many different ways.
I think a lot of people think of surrender as, and even detachment too, because they're kind of synonymous, as apathy, as not caring, as being, okay, now I'm just going to be a lazy bum and sit. And it's less about the physical actions and it's more about the place you are doing things from, right? We have this drive to want to be in control, to want to be right about things, right? To want to just and that's what creates a lot of stress. We feel like we have to grip so tight to the reins of everything. Otherwise, it's just going to fall apart. And what that really does is it doesn't force us to it. It creates a space where we live from a place of worry and stress and fear. And I give the example of, would you rather have a surgeon who is operating on you living from a place of total stress and fear, worry, or someone who is just like calm and present and relaxed? It's a pretty obvious answer, but most people internally feel like they need to be stressed and in control and worried about all the details because everything that's going to go wrong, otherwise nothing's going to get done. And in reality, what's happening is you are just now working from a place of survival. And that's not how humans perform at their highest level. We perform when we're in a space of flow, a space of peace, confidence, just acceptance in a way. And again, it's not wishing, all this negative stuff happens. We can still have the thing we want to create. We can still want to do really well. But I think for me, what surrender has meant is allowing myself to just be with the flow of life, the flow of how things are. And I think in this process, I've realized more and more how much there is a flow of life. It absolutely, life goes on whether we're stressed or not, right? And I think what it's allowed me to do is release my attachment to control and just be in a space that is much calmer. I still take action from that space, which is amazing, but it is allowing things to be. It is not resisting that comes up, the things that come up. If there is a negative customer experience, if PO doesn't get signed, order doesn't go out, if power goes out in the middle of a call and you Zoom, crashes, it's really learning to just be okay with what is. And again, it's not accepting these negative outcomes and be like, everything's going to go to shit. It's instead allowing yourself to just be in a state that is much more calm and peaceful. Because from that state, you have much more clarity on what the right next thing to do is. And you go, okay, am I going to allow this to throw me off kilter, to throw me off center line, to ruin my day? Because that jacks up my heart rate, increases stress levels, it tires me out. It has this impact on my body. Or do I want to try and cultivate a state of much more equanimity? To me, surrender is a process of just trusting the unfolding of life to consciousness, to the intelligence that is the fabric that weaves through everything in life, and seeing what comes up. And so far, the walk has just been a big experiment in that. And it's just blown my mind. It's been incredible for things to see things take shape.
So how many months left estimated for you?
I've got about 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 or 6 weeks.
Wow, fantastic. So to wrap up here, I know it's hard for all of us to stay in the moment. And now you're down to 5 weeks. We're all inclined to think about what's next. What am I going to do after this? What am I doing 3 hours from now, let alone what am I actually doing right now in the moment? I would imagine maybe this is not the case, but that, as you get closer to your final destination, these thoughts become more prevalent. And final destinations are not the right word, but as you get closer to the beaches of Virginia to complete your walk across the country, are you still able to enjoy the journey for what it is in the moment? And as you're thinking about what's next, what is the eye of the future here? What are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think every day is different in terms of where my awareness sits and what I enjoy. Some days it's about just enjoying that I have a shoulder to walk on and I'm not walking in the road and jumping off the road when cars come.
Life's simple pleasures, huh?
Seriously. I mean, I will never look at a shoulder the same again. I'll tell you that. The joy in eating whole foods, so much has been gas station food or Dollar General food and processed junk, simple pleasures like that. And sometimes it's a much more kind of meta appreciation and gratitude for the whole walk. And sometimes I get a glimpse of my feet walking and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. So definitely every day it just shows up differently. And I think looking forward, some things early on I realized was, as I look at my life moving forward, how much better I felt being outside all day in these beautiful spaces, just in open sky and not being on my computer all day, not being trying to write content for something. And so as I think about my life moving forward, I was like, I want to spend more time outside, whatever that looks like. I want to get more intentional with my jiu-jitsu training. I want to do more in-person stuff versus all online stuff. So we're going to start throwing up 3 or 4 retreats a year. Part of at least the plan now is to live out of a camper van or a truck with a camper. I will trim my beard so I don't continue to look like this. For 6 months, a year, who knows, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. I'm surrendering to it. There's an example. And to be able to travel around a bit, but spend more time outside to live a little bit more minimalist life. Just again, could be short term, but just something I feel like I want to lean into a bit more, but also to drive around to different cities in the US and host little road shows, host little community events, 5 to 10 men doing dinners, sitting around a campfire, cold plunge, Maybe we go whitewater rafting, we go on a hike, we go camping, something where we're creating real connection in person. And so doing that, and then of course, growing our men's community in our business and stuff as well. So that's that. And I should say my plan is to go to Portugal for 2 weeks after the trip to disconnect in a different way and to reconnect and to heal my feet and then come back and look for a camper van. So we'll see what actually happens.
Yeah. To not walk 25 to 30 miles a day for some time. That's awesome. How can people find you, Tim? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn's the best, Tim Perreira. Also Threads and Instagram, saying Tim Perreira. That's pretty straightforward.
And if people want to donate and support the mission, how can they go about doing that?
On my LinkedIn page, well, really on all of them, there's a link at the top of the page or in the bio, and that will take you to a GoFundMe page. And you can donate to GoFundMe page. Also, I have a link in there to buy a Keep Going hat that we've sold over 450 hats, which is, I was hoping we could sell 100, and it just caught fire and people were buying a bunch. So that is also a way to support. All of that will go to supporting the mission as well. So 2 ways you can contribute. If you want a physical item, if you want to donate.
Very cool. The hats are great. What a nice surprise. Like, no high expectations on that. And all of a sudden, they're everywhere and people are wearing it. I should have gotten one before we recorded this podcast.
Yeah, it's okay.
A miss on my part.
Yeah, I don't tell you.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's always great to catch up. We'll be rooting you on over the final weeks of the journey and looking forward to seeing what comes next as well.
Thanks, man. Good chat.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS, home of Dental OS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening.